Have you ever wondered why, in the midst of a noisy world, your soul longs for silence? What if this yearning isn't a weakness, but a sacred calling from God, preparing you for something greater? Stay with me as we uncover hidden truths about solitude that could transform your spiritual life. Solitude isn't just about staying home. It's a powerful spiritual tool. From Jesus withdrawing to pray, to saints finding strength in silence, this longing for quiet isn't avoidance, but a divine invitation to hear God more clearly and discern your true purpose. We'll explore 6 truths that show how solitude can be a blessing, a way to hear God more clearly, discern your divine purpose, and protect your soul. Let's dive deep into these spiritual insights and see how they align with the teachings of the Church and the lives of the saints. 1. Truth. 1. Healing in solitude. Jesus often withdrew to quiet places to pray, as seen in Luke 5:16. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. This passage reveals a key lesson. Solitude was essential to Jesus' life. Even the Son of God, surrounded by crowds, understood the necessity of quiet retreat to reconnect with his Father. If Jesus, in his divine nature, needed time away for prayer and healing, how much more do we, in our humanity, need solitude for spiritual growth? Throughout Catholic history, many saints have embraced solitude as a path to deeper communion with God. Saint Francis of Assisi, for example, spent significant time in the wilderness, seeking the Lord's guidance and renewing his spirit. Saint Teresa of Avila, in her spiritual writings, emphasized how silence fosters profound encounters with God. These saints understood that being away from the noise of the world opened the heart to deeper prayer and healing. Solitude is not about avoidance or escaping from the world, but about creating sacred space to hear God's voice. In the quiet, God can speak directly to our hearts, drawing us closer to His will. Many of us feel drained by the demands of daily life, endless noise, constant activity, and external pressures. We become overwhelmed, not because of the challenges, but because we rarely stop to listen to our soul. It's in the stillness that God's peace can enter, healing our wounds, clearing our minds, and renewing our spirits. Embracing solitude allows us to prepare for the work God has for us. It's an act of spiritual discipline that rejuvenates our strength to face the world with greater clarity. Think of the time Jesus spent in the wilderness preparing for his ministry. Solitude wasn't a retreat from responsibility, but a renewal of purpose. Similarly, when we step away from the chaos, we're not retreating but refining ourselves for the mission God has entrusted to us. In a culture that prioritizes constant activity and busyness, choosing solitude can feel countercultural. But the truth is, embracing quiet moments is vital for maintaining spiritual health. When we're constantly rushing from one task to the next, we lose the ability to discern God's voice. Solitude helps us tune into God's whispers, allowing His wisdom to guide our decisions, actions, and relationships. Next time you feel the urge to be still, don't ignore it. Trust that God is inviting you to a deeper connection. Like Jesus, find your quiet place, listen intently, and allow God to heal your spirit. It is in those moments of solitude that your soul is restored and renewed, ready to face the world with strength and clarity. 2. Truth. 2. Spiritual sensitivity and divine discernment. In 1 Corinthians 2:15 it says, "But the one who is spiritual discerns all things." This verse speaks to a profound truth. Spiritual sensitivity allows us to perceive the world around us in ways others may not. While most people move through life distracted by external noise, those who seek solitude develop the ability to discern deeper truths. They hear the whispers of God in ways that are often missed in the hustle of daily life. The Desert Fathers, who lived in the early centuries of the Church, sought out solitude in the harsh desert to hear God more clearly. Figures like Saint Anthony the Great withdrew to the wilderness to purify their hearts and minds, free from distractions. Their silence wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a deliberate choice to fine-tune their spiritual senses. Just like these saints, we too can cultivate spiritual discernment through quiet moments alone with God. Solitude sharpens our ability to perceive spiritual realities. In the quiet, we can notice the small, subtle movements of the Holy Spirit in our lives. For example, you might feel a sudden peace in a difficult situation, or an insight might come to you in prayer that you hadn't noticed before. These moments aren't coincidences. They are divine interventions, and they become more apparent in the stillness. When we embrace silence, we make room for the Holy Spirit to speak, helping us discern God's will in both major decisions and everyday situations. In today's world, we're bombarded with information and distractions, social media, work pressures, and endless stimuli. It's easy to become desensitized to the spiritual world around us. We can miss God's voice in the clamor. That's why solitude is essential. It allows us to tune out the noise and listen more attentively. Just as a musician needs quiet to hear the notes, so too does the spiritual person need quiet to hear the divine. By choosing moments of solitude, we strengthen our ability to discern God's presence and direction in our lives. It's in these quiet spaces where God refines our spiritual sensitivity, opening our eyes to see things as He does. This isn't about becoming detached from the world, but rather being more deeply connected to God's heart, enabling us to respond with wisdom and clarity when challenges arise. So, when you find yourself drawn to silence, take it as an invitation to grow spiritually. Trust that in those moments of stillness, God is revealing truths and guiding you closer to His perfect will. Let the quiet be your teacher, sharpening your spiritual senses to perceive the divine in every moment. 3. Truth. 3. Divine timing and purpose. In Ecclesiastes 3:1, we are reminded that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. This verse speaks to the divine rhythm of life, a rhythm that often contrasts with the rush and pressure of the world around us. The world tells us to move faster, to achieve more, and to keep up with the constant pace of life. But God's timing is different. His timing is perfect, and it unfolds in its own season, at the pace He determines. When we look at the lives of the saints, we see that many of them embraced God's timing, even when it didn't align with society's expectations. St. John of the Cross, for example, spent years in deep contemplation, waiting for the right moment to begin his public ministry. His solitude was not wasted time, but a preparation for the divine calling that would soon unfold. His waiting wasn't passive. It was an active form of faith, trusting that God's timing would come, and when it did, it would be exactly what was needed. In our own lives, we often feel impatient. We want results now. We want to understand our purpose immediately, to step into our calling without delay. But God's timing is rarely about immediate gratification. It's about preparation, discernment, and alignment with His perfect plan. Sometimes we need solitude not to escape, but to align ourselves with the timing of God. In these quiet moments, we are being prepared. Our hearts and minds are being attuned to His will. Jesus, too, modeled the importance of divine timing. Throughout His ministry, He would often withdraw to pray and reflect, waiting for the right moment to reveal Himself. Even before His passion, He spent time in the Garden of Gethsemane, praying and seeking His Father's guidance. He knew that His mission would unfold at the appointed time. Jesus didn't rush through His life. He allowed His actions to flow from divine timing, trusting that every step was part of a greater plan. In our busy lives, it's easy to feel as if we're falling behind, as though we're not doing enough or moving fast enough. But solitude helps us to slow down and recalibrate. It's in these quiet moments that we learn to trust God's pace. Waiting in solitude allows us to focus on His will, not the world's. It teaches us that divine purpose isn't a product of rushing, but of listening and waiting for God's signal. So, if you feel like you're in a waiting season, embrace it. Know that God is preparing you for something greater, and His timing is always perfect. Use this time to rest in Him, to listen closely, and to prepare your heart for what is to come. Trust that, in God's time, your purpose will be revealed, exactly when you are ready for it. 4. Truth. 4. The power of sacred solitude. In Matthew 26:36-39, we see Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, seeking solitude before his most significant moment, his passion. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." In this sacred moment, Jesus withdrew from his disciples and sought intimate solitude with his Father. Even though he was about to face betrayal, suffering, and death, he chose to retreat into silence, trusting that in solitude he would find the strength to face what lay ahead. Sacred solitude is more than just a break from the world. It is a place where we can meet God in a deeply personal way. Like Jesus in Gethsemane, our moments of solitude become sacred when we intentionally invite God into them. It's where we lay down our fears, surrender our burdens, and open our hearts to God's will. It's not a place of weakness, but one of incredible strength. In the quiet, we receive clarity, direction, and spiritual strength to carry out God's will for our lives. Throughout the history of the Church, countless saints have experienced the transformative power of solitude. Saint Catherine of Siena, for instance, spent much of her life in solitude, even when the world needed her as a spiritual leader. Her silence was not avoidance, it was a source of power. She received divine insights, guidance, and wisdom in her solitude, which she then used to guide the Church in her time. Her sacred moments of solitude gave her the clarity to step forward into her mission with authority and peace. Solitude has this power. It allows us to connect deeply with God and gain a better understanding of our purpose. But it's not always an easy place to be. In a world that values constant activity, solitude can feel uncomfortable at first. We may fear the silence or feel lost without the noise of daily life. But when we push past that discomfort, we open the door to something profoundly transformative. It is in these quiet spaces that our souls are renewed, our spiritual clarity is sharpened, and we are equipped for the tasks God has set before us. In your own life, when you find yourself drawn to silence, remember that it is a divine invitation. Take the time to retreat into a place of solitude where you can surrender to God and seek His guidance. Whether it's a quiet room, a walk in nature, or simply a few moments of silent prayer, these sacred spaces are where God will renew you, heal you, and empower you to fulfill your divine calling. Just like Jesus in the garden, don't be afraid of the solitude. Embrace it. It is where your soul finds strength and where God meets you most intimately. 5. Truth. 5. Solitude as protection. In Psalm 91:2, we are reminded, "The Lord is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." This verse beautifully illustrates the protective power of solitude. Just as a fortress shields us from external dangers, solitude acts as a spiritual refuge, safeguarding our hearts and minds from the noise and chaos of the world. When we retreat to the quiet, we place ourselves under God's protective care, allowing Him to guard our spirits from harmful influences. Throughout the lives of saints, we see how solitude often became a source of spiritual protection. Saint Benedict, the founder of the Benedictine order, retreated to the wilderness to avoid the distractions of the world. His time in solitude wasn't simply a way to disconnect. It was a way to protect himself from the temptations and pressures that could derail his spiritual mission. He understood that only in quiet, free from external distractions, could he guard his inner peace and preserve his focus on God's will. The world around us is filled with distractions, temptations, negativity, and emotional turmoil that can easily drain us. Whether it's the relentless demands of modern life or the subtle pressures of social expectations, it's easy to become overwhelmed and lose sight of our true calling. In these moments, solitude serves as a shield. It gives us the opportunity to recalibrate, to step away from the noise, and to hear God's voice clearly. Just like a warrior retreats to a safe place to prepare for battle, we retreat into solitude to protect our spiritual strength and focus. In solitude, we gain clarity. We begin to see through the falsehoods, the distractions, and the noise that can easily manipulate our hearts. God, in His wisdom, provides us with these quiet moments as a means of protection. When we step away from the chaos, we find refuge in His presence. It's in these sacred spaces that we can discern the truth, separate ourselves from negative influences, and strengthen our resolve. The spiritual protection offered in solitude is not just about avoiding harm, it's about preserving the purity of our hearts. The world often pulls us in many different directions, but when we seek solitude, we allow God to protect and renew our spirits. As we retreat into the quiet, we can resist the temptations that seek to distract us from our divine mission. So the next time you feel the need for solitude, don't dismiss it. See it as an opportunity to seek refuge in God's presence. In the silence, you are not withdrawing from life. You are protecting your spirit, allowing God to strengthen you for what lies ahead. 6. Truth. 6. Your home as a sacred space. In Matthew 6:6, Jesus tells us, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen." This simple yet profound instruction reveals that our homes are not just places to live, but sacred spaces where we can encounter God in deep and intimate ways. The quiet corners of our homes, where we retreat in prayer and reflection, become holy ground when we invite God's presence into them. These spaces, filled with silence and peace, provide a sacred environment where our spirits can connect with the divine. Throughout the history of the Church, the home has often been seen as a place of prayer and spiritual refuge. In the early Church, Christians gathered in homes to worship and pray, creating spaces where God's presence could be felt even in the midst of the world's distractions. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, known for her deep spirituality, often wrote about the sacredness of small, everyday moments in her home life. She found God in the quiet of her room, in the simplicity of daily chores, and in her intimate conversations with Him. For Saint Thérèse, the home was more than a shelter. It was a place of divine communion. When we embrace our homes as sacred spaces, we transform them into places where God can speak to us more clearly. In the busyness of life, we often seek spiritual fulfillment outside of our homes, attending church services, joining group prayers, or going on retreats. But the truth is, our homes are powerful places of encounter with God. Whether it's a moment of quiet reflection in the morning, a prayer before bed, or a moment of gratitude over a meal, the home becomes a sacred altar where we meet with God daily. Your home is where you can retreat from the world's noise and distractions, where you can reconnect with the stillness that allows you to hear God's voice. It is where you can be yourself, unfiltered and unafraid, knowing that God is present in every corner of your life. Every item in your home, the Bible on your shelf, the candle you light during prayer, the chair where you sit in solitude, becomes a reminder of God's constant presence. These sacred objects and moments help center your heart and mind, drawing you closer to God in your daily life. So, embrace the sacredness of your home. Turn your space into a place of prayer, peace, and reflection. It doesn't matter if your home is large or small, simple or luxurious. The key is inviting God into it. Just as Jesus retreated to quiet places to pray, let your home become your sanctuary, a place where you draw near to God, hear His voice, and find the peace that sustains your soul. In the quiet of your home, you'll find clarity, purpose, and the presence of God in ways that transform your heart. Conclusion. As we've explored in this video, solitude isn't just about being alone. It's about embracing the sacred space where God meets us most intimately. From the example of Jesus withdrawing to pray to the lives of saints like Saint Thérèse of Lisieux and Saint Benedict, we've seen how solitude is not an escape, but a profound invitation to grow closer to God, discern His voice, and find the strength to fulfill our divine calling. In a world that constantly demands our attention, these quiet moments become precious opportunities to heal, protect, and renew our spirits. Your home, too, can become a sacred space, a sanctuary where God's presence fills every corner, turning even the smallest moments into encounters with the divine. Remember, you are not hiding from the world by seeking solitude. You are preparing yourself to face it with greater clarity, purpose, and strength. By embracing the quiet, you align your heart with God's timing and purpose for your life. Solitude isn't just a retreat, It's a powerful tool for spiritual growth, divine protection, and personal transformation. So next time you feel the pull of silence, don't hesitate. Step into it, knowing that it is in these moments that God is preparing you for something greater. Let your home become an altar, your solitude a sanctuary, and your quiet moments a time for divine revelation. And as you walk through life, carry the peace, strength, and clarity you've gained in those sacred spaces. May you find the courage to embrace solitude, knowing that in your quiet, God is doing something incredible in your soul.